We're going to be in Matthew chapter 5 again this morning. Matthew chapter 5. Good morning, everybody. It is great to be with you this morning. Want to welcome all of our guests. We're so glad that you're here. I've gotten to meet a few. Hopefully you can continue to stick around and let us get to know you a little bit better and reconnect and find out what's been going on in your life. And hopefully you're able to join with us again soon when you're able. We do want to welcome those who are joining online. I know we have some members. I know we have probably some who've never been with us and are just checking things out. And we're grateful that the technology is here to allow that. And we hope that in the near future you're able to come and join us in person, because as good as the online service is, it's even better in person. Next Sunday, as it's already been announced, is National Back to Church Sunday. And the big news is there's going to be a potluck. So invite your friends to come and enjoy the potluck. There will be plenty of food to go around. You don't have to worry about that. But grab one of the cards out there, not just this Sunday, but any Sunday. Anyone's always welcome to attend. But make sure that you're inviting your friends. Make sure you're inviting your co-workers. It's going to be a great day, just like every Sunday. I will also point out that we have the sermon maps there in the back and over here in the foyer. They're not an outline. I'm not tied to them, but they do have questions and passages that are there for continual thought and questioning and things as we continue to wrestle through this and continue to become more and more like Christ. In high school, I did pivot irrigation work. And there was one day where we had a big windstorm come up, and we had a trailer set up to service the systems. And we'd go around and we would pump oil and grease into the different parts of the system and make sure everything was working right and everything was ready for the season. And during this windstorm, the trailer got knocked over, the gooseneck got knocked over, and it crushed one of the 55-gallon drums of grease on the back of that trailer. And it made an absolute mess. And me and one of my buddies were tasked with cleaning up this mess. So we got out the crane and we were trying to get that up and off. And he had more experience than I did, so he put that strap around the barrel and got it lifted up, and I was there kind of guiding it, and I knew it was probably going to get above my head, so I just let go. And wouldn't you know it, that thing tipped end for end and just started dumping out and made a huge mess. And I thought we had just made a huge mistake, because one, we'd made a huge mess, and two, the oil or the grease is very expensive. And my boss was well within his rights to say, there's the door and see ya, or make us pay some money to, recoup some of his losses there. But in his great mercy, he didn't ask us to do that, and I was grateful, and I went on to make many other mistakes for him, and learn many other lessons working for him. I hope that you have some stories like that in your own life, where you've gotten into some pickles, you've made some mistakes, and yet somebody has offered you grace and offered you mercy in those moments to not have to be harmed by a small mistake or even a large mistake that you made. It reminds me of the Beatitudes, which we are currently studying as we kind of get into the beginning here of the Sermon on the Mount. And I think it's helpful for us to read this passage. Seeing the crowd, Jesus went up on the mountainside and he sat down. His disciples came to him, and he opened his mouth saying and taught them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who are reviled, persecuted, and utter all kinds of evil falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so they persecuted the prophets who were before you." This word blessed appears 9 times in these short verses and these 8 Beatitudes. And the way that Jesus pairs this word, supremely blessed, well off, fortunate, with words like poor and mourning and meek and hunger and thirst, really are shocking. It's really shocking to have such a wonderful word like blessing paired with these concepts. And yet, as we've walked through these, we've seen, indeed, if we will change our way of thinking, if we will see things through the kingdom lens, indeed, blessed are those who are poor in spirit, who are mourning, who are meek. You truly are blessed in those situations. This morning, we're going to be looking at this concept of merciful. And at first, because we like to receive mercy, we're like, well, okay, but this one makes sense. Blessed are the merciful, right? Absolutely. But really what we're thinking is, blessed are those who offer me mercy. I do want to bless those. I think that's wonderful. But if we truly understand this concept of mercy and what it means to be the one offering mercy, it becomes less obvious. And while it makes sense that those who would give mercy would receive mercy, it really is a conundrum. So let's see if we can unpack this word mercy. Because this word mercy is really kind of one of these churchy words, isn't it? It's not one that's often used in the business and the marketplace. Right? This word mercy or this word grace that's often used with it, it's kind of two sides of the same coin, are very churchy words. So let's see if we can kind of unpack these and get a better understanding of what this concept of mercy is. Mercy is compassion. It's forgiveness. It's shown towards somebody within whom you have the power to punish and harm them. Okay, that's a really good definition, but I feel like we're defining a word with a word that really isn't helping us, because compassion and forgiveness are also kind of large concepts that are difficult to understand. So what I want us to do this morning is I want us to look at two parables of Jesus where this idea of mercy is shown, and I think that will really put some flesh on it. It'll really help us to understand this concept of mercy. Now remember, a parable is an earthly story, just a common story, but it has a heavenly meaning. It has one goal that Jesus is using, or the rabbis would use to make a point. Right? It's a teaching story. So one of the places we might look would be Matthew chapter 18. We have the story of the unmerciful servant. So there was a man who owed a huge sum of money, and the king asked him to come in. Now the amount of money that this man owed was the equivalent of a small country's entire net worth. Right, we're talking about the budget for an entire country. So we're talking about millions, if not billions of dollars here. This man owed a ton of money. And it really is one of those questions. How on earth did he come into this kind of money? And where on earth did it go? But none of those questions are answered, because that's not the point. The point is he owed a huge sum of money. And the king says, I demand where's an accounting of this? Where's the money? You're supposed to pay me back. And the man says, well, I don't got it. He says, well, then have this man and his family sold off into debtor's prison to have him pay back this debt. Now think about that. If you owed millions, if not billions of dollars, how long would it take you working a job where all your funds are going to paying back that debt? How long would it take you to pay that back? Long time, right? Very long time. And this man throws himself at the mercy of the king and says, please give me more time and I will pay it back. Now that's even more comical, right? It's even more comical that this man thinks that he can earn millions, if not billions of dollars to pay back this debt in just a few years. I mean, that's really comical. And the king does take mercy on him, and not only does he not punish this man by throwing him into debtor's prison, but he says, I will forgive the debt. I'll completely erase the debt. This man is forgiven millions, if not billions of dollars worth of debt. And he goes on his way. And as he's going on his way, he meets a fellow man who he loaned some money to. And the equivalency is basically, they went out to lunch and he covered the meal. We're talking about a day's wages. And he grabs the man and he says, pay me back what you owe me. And he says, well, I don't got it, but give me some time and I will pay it back. Now, I think most of us think we can pay back a day's wages or a meal. Right? That's within grasp. But he doesn't have mercy on this man. He throws him into debtor's prison to have the debt paid back. Can you imagine having been forgiven $1 million, having that weight lifted off your shoulder, you're walking along, you see somebody that you spotted $20 for, and you say, I need that $20 back, and they say, don't got it. He says, well, I'm taking you to court. I'm going to sue you over that. That's what this man did. Now, word gets back to the king that this man is acting this way. And he calls him back in and he says, how dare you act this way? I forgave you that huge debt, and here you are suing your brother over a measly sum. I'm going to reinstate the debt. I'm going to throw you into debtor's prison until you pay back the whole sum. I think this shows us something about mercy. So let's see if we can kind of unpack that a little bit. The king forgave this huge sum. It was merciful of the king to allow this man more time. That's mercy. He needed to pay back the sum. That's justice. That's justice, to have to pay it back. That's what is owed. He didn't have it. There was ways to get it. It was merciful to give him more time. That's what he asked for. But above even that, putting off receiving back this money, the king goes even further and is even more merciful in forgiving the debt. And by pairing this idea of forgiveness with mercy, I think we begin to understand what we're talking about here. That it's going to cost the king a great sum to not have this income collected. He's going to have to just count it off as a loss. That's huge. To think about what this king will lose in offering this kind of mercy. And the man who was given this mercy does not extend that mercy. He does not even allow himself to be missing a few dollars that he loaned out to one of his fellow men. He wasn't willing to let that cost him that small amount. And we look at that story and we're like, how could he not? You are forgiven this huge amount, and yet you demand of your fellow servant. It does not compute. I mean, really? You're going to act that way after you were forgiven that huge debt? You're going to demand, you're going to sue your fellow man over a measly sum. Just let it go. But he couldn't let that cost him. Let's look at another parable. Jesus in Luke chapter 10 does this what we often call the Good Samaritan story. Man asks, who's my neighbor? Jesus says, okay, well, let me tell you a story. They were going from Jerusalem down to Jericho. Now that sets the stage. We're talking about a very small, narrow, dangerous path. And he fell into robbers, their worst case scenario. He's beaten up. He's stripped of his clothes. He's stripped of his wealth. And he's left for dead there on the road to Jericho. And there just so happened to be a priest and a Levite coming along. And they saw the man. And it was a sign that there was trouble in the area. But more than that, there was a dilemma of how am I going to react under the law? Now remember, they're going from Jerusalem. They had been working probably in the temple. They're going down to Jericho. What does righteousness, what does holiness require of them? And Jesus in humor says, and they passed by on the other side of the road. There was no other side of the road. They had to step over this guy. Maybe even get a running start just to make sure there was enough space between him and them that if he happened to die as they were crossing over him, they wouldn't be tainted. And then he says, and then a Samaritan happened to be coming along. And he saw the man, and he had compassion upon him. He felt great pity for him. He took time out of his own schedule, and he bandaged the man's wounds. He gives up his transport and puts the man on his own donkey, takes the man into town, having been slowed down by transporting this man, and then puts him in his own hotel room, tends to him through the night, gives up rest, and then in the morning he tells the innkeeper, let him keep the room. Here's what I owe you. Here's a little bit of extra so that you can take care of him. And when I get back from business, I will pay you what I owe you for the remainder of what it takes to nurse this man back to health. Jesus then asked the man, this legal scholar, so who's the neighbor? In Luke chapter 10 and verse 37, he said, the one who showed him mercy. Jesus says, go and do likewise. He can't even bring himself to say the Samaritan. He says, the one that showed him mercy. And I think as we walk through that story, we begin to see how the Samaritan offered mercy to this man who he was filled with compassion for. As he took his own time, as he took his own resources, as he cared for this man, allowed it to cost him a great deal to extend to him mercy. And then as the crowd is considering the story, considering the mercy that had been given in this story, Jesus says, I want you to go and do likewise. I'm calling you to this kind of action. So mercy often has this idea of the withholding of punishment. Justice demands this. I'm going to withhold the punishment, what is due, mercifully. But we also see that within the idea of mercy is also this idea of suffering on another's behalf to forgive the debt, to forgive the wrong. That's a challenge. I don't care how you break it down. And very much like with meekness and this idea of letting go and not demanding one's own way, the person who is merciful, who is withholding punishment to those to whom it's deserved and extending mercy and allowing it to cost them, is not going to get ahead in this life. They're not going to be blessed. And yet Jesus says those who are merciful are blessed. They will receive mercy. Very much like the first parable. This man was given mercy, and the expectation was that he would then show mercy. And we look at that story and we go, how do you not? Now, one of the things that I think we need to clarify is the difference between mercy and grace, because they're two sides of the same coin, but they're very different. Grace is unmerited favor. It's the giving of something that is not earned, whereas mercy is not getting what you do deserve. Two very different things. Mercy is giving you more time to pay back a debt. Mercy is not punishing you to the full extent of the law. Mercy is forgiving the debt. Grace is then giving you a check to get back on your feet. Grace is allowing you heaven access when you deserved hell. Two sides of the same coin, but very different aspects. Both connected because they were paid for by Christ's death upon the cross. Because of his completed work upon the cross, he extends to us mercy, not giving us what our sins deserve, passing over us, and yet then he extends to us grace in providing us the opportunity to be adopted into the family of God, to become heirs with him. What a tremendous blessing. When we really understand what mercy is, we do kind of question. Really? Blessed are those who extend mercy. Aren't they the ones who take a loss every chance they get? Aren't they the ones who keep around young, inexperienced workers who dump complete 55-gallon drums of oil on the ground? You're not going to get ahead with people like that. But truly, Jesus says, blessed are those who are merciful, for they will receive mercy, because there's an expectation that we will extend mercy. We have to ask the question, can I afford to extend mercy? Can I afford it? I have to count the cost. And yet, when I consider the mercy that has been extended to me, how can I not? How can I not extend mercy to others when I have been forgiven so much? Just like that first parable of the man who had been forgiven this great sum, and then he looks at this small wrong that had been done to him. How could he not extend mercy? And yet here he is suing his fellow man over the cost of a meal, over a day's wages. How can we not forgive when we have been forgiven so much? We all want mercy. None of us want what we deserve, if we're honest. If we truly understand what we've done, if we truly understand the cost, we don't want what we deserve. We want mercy. We want grace. Mercy costs God. Grace costs God. He's extended it to us in His love, in His compassion. And then the question is, how can you not? How can you not extend that same mercy? How can you not extend that same grace to others when you have been forgiven so much, when you have been given so much? How can you not pass that along? So here's my challenge to you this morning. Be merciful. Be a people of mercy. Forgive, for you have been forgiven. Let us go and be a people of mercy.